Okay, so I have you co-host. Okay, and you streaming, I think. Yes, yeah.
All right, sister, can you start the recording? I don't think I'm the host, or can you maybe co-host?
Let me make you.
Yeah, I'm co-host, but I think the host has to record.
Okay, let's see.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Assalamualaikum. We
Walaikum
have,
assalam.
we do have a few other guests who are joining. I'm just gonna let them join as they get in. Um, and I'm going to join on my other device too, because that will allow me to still see you as we start the film. I know we're going to be on a tight schedule for some of you, so I want to go ahead and get started. This is the next part of a series that we've started talking about the criminal legal, criminal justice system, criminal punishment system, as it were. So let's get started, especially because there was a lot happening this weekend. So in the tradition of MAP5, first of all, welcome to MAP5, Muslim American Power 5. And I I know I'm probably going to open up Pandora's box with asking this question, but I'm going to ask it because,
Before you ask the question, why don't we
yes,
open up with our Fatiha?
yeah,
That
let's
might
open.
hamper
Yes,
Pandora's
yeah,
box a bit.
yeah. Let's set the stage because I think we all need to center ourselves with Al Fatiha. You want to do this for me? I'm gonna get a sip of water real quick. But,
Okay.
yes, sister, can you open us up with Al Fatiha?
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. In the English rendering of it from the Book of Ali translation, with the name of Allah, the gracious, most merciful, the most gracious, compassionate. All praise is due to Allah, the guardian of all, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, most gracious, most compassionate, master of the day of judgment. We alone do we serve, thy aid do we seek. Show us the straight path, the path of those on whom thou bestowest favor, not the path of those who go astray. Amen. Okay.
Ameen. Ameen.
So now you can open Pandora's box.
It has been quite a weekend. It has been quite a week since we last met. And there's been a lot happening, and there's been a lot of, let me say, reasons why this happened. In that time, we have some of us have observed, I don't know about the word celebrating, but we've observed uh, Juneteenth. And in the midst of observing the free-ish quality of Black people in America, this person that referred to as the President of the United States, has decided to do what he does best. That's wage chaos and havoc. And as we have said on this show, and I know I said it last week, stay focused. Because while we were so busy watching all the chaos, doing other things. So, in the tradition of MAP5, 2 questions. First of all, we want to acknowledge that Brother Fleming is not with us this morning. His mother passed away last week, and today they are having her memorial services. So we want to send some love and light to our brother. Inshallah. And so I want to ask you 2 things. I'm going to start, sister, and then Judge Shahid.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. So what we usually do is we ask a couple of questions. We ask, what's got your Timbs of thumping on them little toes on the side? What's got your heels pinching that little toe? Sometimes the big toe throbs, but it's that little one that hurts. When that little one hurts, you can't walk. And what has your heart fluttering? So instead of saying what has you happy or sad, that's how we're gonna posture it. So this is how we're gonna start. And we're only gonna take about 5 minutes just all the way around on this one. So really quick, we're gonna do a rapid one because I want to get started with the documentary, and then we're going to have our discussion. So sister, you want to start them off and show them how to do this?
Okay. My heart is fluttering. I was doing some clean out stuff and came across an old Mother's Day card from my daughter. And yesterday happened to be her birthday. And so I was really very happy about that, and I apologize for that. So it felt good, the little message that she had put in there for me. So that was very good. Fluttering heart. So now that toe, and it's strange, but yesterday my little toe did start to bother me. And I had on very comfortable shoes, so it must have been maybe psychological, I don't know, because what bothered me was the corporate media and their reporting of the latest events with this whole Iran debacle. And particularly the reporter from MSNBC, I'm missing his name right now in my mind, who was reporting from Tel Aviv. It's just, you have to realize who the folks are and who they work for, and always follow the money. So that's it, to give our other guests time. So we want Judge Shahid to go, right?
Yes.
Bismillah. There are a lot of things, but I will touch on what our beloved sister just mentioned with respect to corporate media. One of the most powerful people in American media today is not even an American citizen. And that is Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox and also has a controlling interest of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And with the litigation that has been threatened by the President of the United States against PBS, the New York Times, and other legitimate media, a lot of the media are running scared and afraid to say anything that might result in litigation. So as a Muslim, as a Muslim, since we believe in truth and the value of truth, to have a media in the corporate space in America. And I would encourage everyone to look at media from Al Jazeera, Sky News, BBC, so that you can get some balance. But the difficult part for me is that what we are being fed as news is tinted by corporate interest and has to be at least somewhat suspect.
So true, so true. Okay, good.
Let's go with
I've recently discovered Substack, and you get a lot of. What's interesting with that is you get your Joy Reads and your Don Lemon. Don Lemon on his Saturday Substack, he had an interesting presentation with Trita Parsi, who is a very geopolitical analyst and scholar in terms of Iran. So some people might want to also, I would add Democracy Now! And then there's some people on Substack that give balanced reporting. Chris Hedges is another person. So yeah, want to go on to the next person?
Trustee Smith Folds, talk to us.
I think that first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I really enjoy coming to this space. I think the thing that I think both my answers are the same. When you realize that you're living in history, then every day you wake up with the need to make a good choice, the need to make it count, the need to understand and the need, the skill, the passion, the want, the intentionality to understand all of those things that are happening around you and to leave your mark on them in your own whatever you've carved out in your part of the world and society, but to make it better than you found it because you know that you're living in history. So I think that's where I am. I'm complete.
Thank you so much. Let me see. Mr. Terry.
I'm not surprised, neither. I'm shocked. This has been something going on since all of us been on Earth. You can never really fully put all your eggs in the basket when it comes to the media. You have to read between the lines. And I think someone said this. When it's a corporate type of situation, always dealing with funds. And when dealing with funds, that means certain things have to be said a certain way. Otherwise, you would be dismissed or discarded. So I'm not surprised when you trying to do heaven work and hell is a difficult situation.
Thank you. Brother Hank.
I'm assuming we're talking about the impact of media. And from my perspective, it's really clear that media is perpetrated by people who want to control what the masses think. And unfortunately, the delusion of the truth is difficult to sort out because it's always in their best interest. So I'm learning that sometimes it's better to search out other medias other than America to get more insights on what's real and what's not. I'll stop there.
Brother, what's got your heart fluttering or your or them boots hitting that small toe?
When everybody is looking in one direction, I tend to imagine what I'm being distracted from. And so when everyone is looking at the events and the chaos, I've really drilled down into the state budget in California. We're spending over $300 billion. And there appears to me a concerted effort to divide African Americans and Latinos in the legislature with the precision of the cuts and pitting Black and brown people against each other. It seems purposeful to me. and not necessary. So I'm drilling down on what's behind that. Um, and also, I mean, as far as the heart fluttering, that's a painful piece of the process. But there's opportunity there because those dollars are being spent, and who's getting them and where they're flowing is uh, that's what's keeping me awake at night.
That's-
You want to do Ismail?
Ishmael, brother Ishmael, while we wait for Miss Martha.
No, the same one. It's different. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm listening. Thank you.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Slide. Miss Martha, last one. All right, all right, all right. Miss Martha, I know she's on she's doing what
Putting up more fire.
yeah, she's doing what she do. So this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. So actually I wanted let me set the stage really quick because brother Judge Shahid, you had a case before I show this film. You had a case that was it in Indiana or Illinois? The juvenile case. In
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Can you just give us like a 2-minute synopsis? And I know
Oh,
there's asking a lot. A
yeah.
2-minute synopsis on that case. Because I want to
Yes.
set the
Yeah.
stage for this.
Yes, yes. There have been so many police action shootings, and so this one was one of historic proportions in Indiana. A 16-year-old youth was handcuffed behind his back in a police cruiser, and the police said that even though he was handcuffed behind his back in the back seat of a police car, he shot himself and committed suicide. And so we went to court. It took 9 years before we got a trial, but we went to trial, but we got a $3.5 million verdict for his mother, which was the largest verdict for an African American in Indiana at the time. You know, there may have been more, but we were able to get recovery and relief for his mother. Uh, and it was an all-white jury, in fact, that awarded the judgment for his mother. But they said he committed suicide, but we were able to get a jury to award his mother damages for his wrongful death.
How long ago was this?
This was when he was uh, killed in 1987. We got a verdict in 1996, and finally all the appeals were done in 1999.
12 years.
Yes.
12 years.
Brother Judge Shahid, is this the case that Muhammad Sadiq wrote a book about?
Yes, the same case. Yes.
Okay.
What's the name
Yeah.
of the book?
Who killed Michael Taylor?
Yeah.
So I wanted to take a moment to talk about just to say that before we view the because we often talk about um, juvenile justice and school to prison pipeline and all of those, but we talk about them as if they're in this vacuum, or we talk about them as if it's in this theoretical sense, and
Yes.
and we don't talk about it as if it's real,
Yeah.
and that there's real consequences and that it's an actual system, right? The fact that in the United States there's more prisons than there are schools. There's more prisons built every year than there are schools. So I really wanted to make sure we set the stage for that. So give me 1 second. I'm going to set up the documentary. Good morning, Avi.
You know, I think that's what one thing that frustrates history, to go back to that case, Judge Shahid, um, not only just in the criminal law arena, but if you just look at what's going on in the whole political arena right now. Isn't it saying that justice delayed, something about justice delayed, and
Justice
justice not
delayed
served,
is justice denied.
justice denied? And you look at 12 years that this family had to suffer and relive and hear details about this situation, and struggle to get some kind of, what do I want to say, some kind of clearing of her son's name, that he didn't commit suicide. I mean, you know, some police come up with scenarios that are so bizarre. You think of, they must be mentally ill to present this as a fact to justify their action. Um, to think that someone with their hands cuffed behind their back. Or was he supposed to have committed suicide by shooting himself?
Yes, yes. They said he had a gun in his shoe, and even though he was searched, and we put it on the record, he was searched 5 times before he got in the car. They're saying that, and he was wearing a tank top and shorts, and they said he hid a gun in his shoe and was able to get the gun out of his shoe, even though he was handcuffed behind his back, and then put the gun up to his head and shoot himself in the head.
You know?
And one of the other travesties, I think everyone knows here that juvenile records are sealed.
Yeah.
And so, but the juvenile judge at the time that had his juvenile record gave his record to the media. We were talking about how media, corporate media, is just a tool of oppression. But
Yes.
the judge in the juvenile court gave his juvenile record to the media to support the police and what they did.
Did that
Wow.
judge ever suffer any repercussions for doing that?
No, absolutely not. Because the media was complicit. No media ever asked the judge, how did we get these records of a juvenile who had been killed? He was not charged with anything. He was the one that was killed. But yet, to justify the police action, the juvenile judge at the time released his records to make it look like the police had some justification for shooting him because he was not a good person.
And that tends to be the trend, right? You funnel them
Yeah.
out of schools and into the juvenile criminal justice system, and this is where the records start. So let's watch the film. It's just under 22 minutes. We're gonna give special thanks to Five Muamlik Ak. He's the director of the Incarcerated Nation campaign, and he co-produced this segment with Inside Out TV. Let me know if once you can hear it. I'm trying to watch on my second screen to make sure you guys can hear and see it. So let's get started.
Can hear it.
It's called the school to prison pipeline, and it's a national trend where children are funneled out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice system.
And we look at the children who is incarcerated. This child a punishment for holding his food slot. He's being chained to the food slot. 16, 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, pregnant women inside solitary and incarceration. These photographs were taken by Professor Richard Ross of Berkeley, California. He has a project called Juvenile Injustice. And what he's showing is like how 12-year-olds are in solitary, how we have youth who are 18 and 16 left inside a cell with no items, how we chain our youth, devices of torture that are used to restrain children, like the Ethan Allen School in Wisconsin. This is a school considerably, but it's similar to a maximum security correctional facility. Here we have also in another cell in South Bend, Indiana, this is considered a schoolyard. So it's a cage with a little basketball court, and that's what it is for the kids. And we're talking about housing and torturing children.
5 Muallim Ak is now a prison reform activist and director of the Incarcerated Nation campaign. He spent 12 years in prison, and while incarcerated in New York State Prison, he spent 5 of those 12 years in solitary confinement for non-violent infractions. His activism has reached schools and universities nationwide. These images fill the walls of his office, reminding him every day of the difficult task before him in his fight for reform.
So if a kid acts out in school, we change suspension to incarceration. So literally, instead of suspending school kids or literally creating a system that has restorative justice, when I was young, if you act up, you had to write on a chalkboard, you had to help the teacher out, you had to do some type of remedial task that satisfied the environment in the school. That is no longer exists. Detention is another thing. The Board of Education is non-existent. You don't stay after school to take up classes. You go to jail. You go to prison. So the school to prison pipeline is basically shaping the school similar to a prison. We have armed guards. We have security measures that's close to like security going through the airport. You have to go to metal detectors. You have to be hand down, mat, hand wands. You have metal detectors. You have cameras. We spent more money putting cameras in schools than we did in prisons in the last 5 years in America. And literally, we have probation officer. We have a police officer. We have a guidance officer. We have another officer inside the school. We have all these components, this system of containment, and children have to navigate. It takes them 20 minutes to navigate through this system of containment to get into the school. And once they get into school, they can walk right out the back door. Ain't nobody stopping them.
5's son Shaquille recently graduated from high school and knows all too well about the challenges facing youth in public schools.
A lot of problems with the high school systems today is getting inside the high schools at first. Like, you're missing out on educational time just trying to get through security, just trying to get through the metal detectors, getting through armed guards, you know what I mean? Signing in, swiping your ID, you're late for your first period class, you're missing out on your education. And it's really intimidating. You know, it leaves the students with a sort of hostility. As soon as they wake up in the morning, people are tired. You know, I mean, we're coming in 7 o'clock in the morning, and you know what I mean, bright and early out of our beds to go through a hassle. Like, it's basically like airport security to get into your high school, you know what I mean? And it leaves kids messed up in the morning, feeling groggy and, you know, not even half awake.
Today, Shaquille works side by side his father at the Incarcerated Nation campaign. He is the director of youth services, where he aims to educate his peers and give a voice to youth at risk of incarceration. He tells me there is a direct correlation between the public school system and the prison system.
The school systems, it's like there's no room for error. There's a zero tolerance policy, you know what I mean? Like, if a kid is having a bad morning, he didn't eat dinner last night, you know what I mean? He's coming into school angry about, or anything could be on his mind and he acts out about it, or he acts out in any way, he's automatically punished. He's automatically, there's an automatic consequence for his actions, you know what I mean? There's no detention, there's no counseling, there's no, in a lot of schools, in a lot of underprivileged schools, you know, there's not detentions, there's no counselors, there's nobody who gets on you on the one-to-one level to try to see and figure out what's the problem.
Some argue that the increase in security measures is a result of rising fears about violence in schools. One example is the 1999 Columbine High School shooting. However, according to author and Hofstra University professor Alan Singer, the stage was set long before Columbine.
Our modern school system really starts in the 1920s. And the idea at the time was that it would prepare blue-collar immigrants and their children for blue-collar jobs. But by the 1960s, those jobs disappeared, and the rationale for the organization of high school and factory model no longer made sense. And as those jobs disappeared, the schools have more and more shifted to what I call prison model. So first you have the disappearance of work. And in the 1970s, you have massive budget cuts, partly as a result of the war in Vietnam. And schools are cut back, teachers are laid off, schools become much more overcrowded, and the whole schools have become chaotic. Then you have the 1980s, you have a crack epidemic. Crack epidemic destroys communities, destroys families, contributes to that sense of general decay in inner city communities. By the 1990s, you have private companies that are investing in prisons. You have the outsourcing of prisons to these private concerns. And these private concerns, they need raw material. They need the kids to make their profit. And so you have this whole justification of sending the kids to jail. You have the zero tolerance ideology emerges. And the idea behind zero tolerance is that you step out of bounds, something wrong with you, you're going to be sent to jail.
According to Michael Denzel Smith, a fellow at the Nation Institute, while crime rates have gone down, incarceration has increased in recent years.
We are addicted to incarceration. We're addicted to the profits that come through incarceration. We're addicted to free labor, cheap labor, and the way that we produce that now is through the prison system. And so the way, when crime nationally, like the number of crimes, actual crimes being committed over the past 30 to 40 years has actually gone down in the United States. Like we're reducing the amount of crime, but the prison population exploded, in part due to the war on drugs, but in part because we criminalized more things. Like we started to criminalize homelessness, we criminalized mental illnesses, and we locked people up, and we locked them up for longer periods of time. So the prison population has exploded over this time, and we are so beholden to it as an economic force and also just a social control.
Through the juvenile courts and the adult criminal justice system, the United States incarcerates more of its youth than any other country in the world. In 2002, approximately 126,000 juveniles were incarcerated in youth detention facilities alone. Approximately 500,000 youth are brought to detention centers in a given year. This data does not reflect juvenile trialed as adults. Around 40% are incarcerated in privatized for-profit facilities. Singer, who has also taught at high schools across New York and was a guest teacher at Rikers Island Jail Complex, says the issue of race plays a leading role.
White people increasingly are fearful of black minority youth, of immigrant youth, and the zero tolerance and sending kids to jail has just become a way of engaging white voters to support right-wing conservative candidates.
Minority youth are disproportionately represented in incarcerated populations relative to their representation in the general public. A recent report from the National Council on Crime and Delinquency found that Black and Hispanic youth are treated more severely than white youth at every point of contact with the system, from arrest to detention to incarceration, even when charged with the same crime, a point highlighted in a recent article by Smith.
We are a nation built on racism, and that's the way that the system functions, and you will find that on every level of every institution of American life. But also just the perception then of what that produces, the idea that Black youth are more dangerous, more criminal. Until we break that, until we really investigate racism, we investigate the capitalist system under which we operate, we're not going to break our addiction to prison. And when you need bodies in that prison, you're going to either criminalize more behaviors, or you're going to ensure that you have those bodies from a younger and younger age. And that's what the school to prison pipeline does.
According to a recent study by the New York Civil Liberties Union, the neighborhood with the highest percentage of low-income students, the South Bronx here in New York, also has the highest rate of suspensions. When Five and I visited South Bronx, he showed me how close the correlation between the school-to-prison pipeline really is.
Like most schools in New York, because of overcrowding, they create external trailers for the school. And these trailers are classrooms systemically, actually, because of overcrowding, because of lack of funding. And then we have a whole different private school system like charter schools, which is traded on the stock market, and literally it's the IPA. It's literally a public organization that people can buy stock in. So you have people making millions off of the system that varies between public schooling and private schooling. So the private charter schools get funding and get more better education. People and students and parents want their kids to get a better education, so they invest in the private schools, which make profits off their kids. So one of the situations about in mass incarceration is when a person comes home, where are they going to live? They're denied public housing. Most people are from public housing or live in poor environments, can't return to that. In New York State, a person who's incarcerated has to return to their county of conviction. So let's say a person lived in this housing project, he's arrested, he spends 10 years upstate somewhere 15 miles away from his family, 15 hours away. He comes back here, but guess what? He's not allowed in public housing. So where did he have to send them? We have private organizations that open up around the areas that people are not allowed, that profiteer off the housing of them. So the profiteering is made off of the price that the taxpayers pay. $2,700 a month is what they get per person that lives in this place, basically because of shelter allowance. Then they have to take alcohol substance abuse treatment programs. So this organization has a satellite organization that gives them services. They get paid for that. They have to take anger management. They have had any type of altercation inside. They take ART when they come out, they profiteer off of that. They have to pay for parole, $30 a month. They have to literally find employment, and they have to live here. And then, so it creates a system where they're still profiteering off a person once they come out of prison. And this is how close, to me, the pipeline is. Because we're preparing kids for this, literally. Because this is the next step after incarceration. Because you know what? This is a mandate from parole. You have to live here.
Once in the juvenile justice system, little hope exists of escaping.
Earlier, I sat down with a mother who hasn't seen her son in months. He's been incarcerated twice. The first time he was picked up was when he was 16 years old, and he was kept for 4 years. He's currently in federal prison under the suspicion of having a firearm. However, his mother tells me that he did not possess a firearm at the time he was picked up back in January. Now, at first, she was reluctant to talk to me, mainly because she was afraid that if authorities saw her interview, they would take it out on her son. She ultimately agreed, hoping to be a voice for other mothers in her situation. Here's part of our interview.
They arrested him, saying that he was being charged with possession of a firearm as a felon. Right now, that's all we basically know. He wasn't picked up with a firearm. He didn't have a firearm on him. They picked him up basically a month later from when they saying the incident actually happened. So we really don't know. Some officers came to my home saying that my son had a warrant for his arrest, and when I asked to see the warrant, they showed me like a profile paper. It wasn't no warrant, and I told them when they come back with a warrant that they can, speak with my son. They never came back. When he went to court for a separate case on January 31st, they picked him up from the courthouse. When we tried to speak with the detective that left the card, they said they didn't even know who he was. He didn't work at the precinct or anything, so we don't really know what the case is about.
She believes her son was targeted because they had put out a civilian review case against police harassment before he was arrested the first time as a minor.
Some officers been harassing my son since he was a kid, just because of the neighborhood he's from, I feel. We put out a civilian complaint review case against them, and since then, it's just been constant harassment, even to the point where he did a state time for 4 years, and even while he was locked up, they was coming to my home saying he did things, and I'm asking them, how are they saying that if he's locked up in your care? So I know it's harassment, because even when he was not home, they was still coming.
Her message to the police is clear and simple.
To the officers, do your job, stop locking up innocent kids, and for the people who can help our children. Because one, they know we from the inner city. We don't have money like that. We can't afford these high-profile lawyers. So help our children if you can. Help them, because they being held for stuff they're not really doing.
The odds of returning to Department of Youth Services increases 13.5 times for youth with a prior commitment, which is more than carrying a weapon, gang membership, or poor parental relationships.
What they'll do is they'll target kids. They'll pick them up for small offenses. And what happens is kids will then plead guilty to the small offense, a small felony, and they'll be let go. But what kids don't understand is that once they plead guilty to this small offense and they're allowed to walk, they could then get picked up for virtually anything, and they could be sent back to jail. They don't even have to prove they did anything. They just have to prove they violated their parole. So what you have is a lot of kids just marking time in these cells, who are marking time because they fell into the trap. They fell into the trap, they pleaded guilty to something, and I'm not saying they didn't do it, but they pleaded guilty to something. They thought they were allowed to walk. They thought they would be given another chance. They're just being set up. Now in New York, the jails are full of kids who then get picked up on the second offense. But it's worse in other states. In the old Confederacy, kids are talked to about pleading guilty. They plead guilty. Not only are they at risk of getting picked up again because they're sent down to the same communities where they were before, but now they lose their citizenship rights. They lose their right to vote. They will never regain it.
When students are forced out of school for disruptive behavior, they are usually sent back to the same neighborhoods, low income, with no to little resources, stigmatized and falling behind in their studies.
They are a symptom of the problem, the breakdown of communities, and the failure of our society to address it. I don't believe schools are going to address all the problems of society. What schools do is they reinforce the society and they prepare people for entry in a society which has no jobs. So you have young people coming out of inner city communities, going to schools, going to boarding schools, getting suspended for inconsequential actions, being talked to badly by security guards. So what ends up happening is they get suspended, they stop coming. Well, in these communities, which are often in decay, the gangs become their family. The gangs become the employer of last resort. The gangs help to protect kids from other gangs. So what ends up happening is the gangs are not the cause. The gangs are the symptom of societal decay in inner cities.
We visited Project Uplift, located in a housing project in South Bronx, which aims to create a pipeline between public high schools and colleges.
Our focus is to be able to, aside from providing work readiness and the college readiness, is to provide kind of a social empowerment and civic responsibility for our students. Something that it's almost never touched on in this section here. Because of our demographic and the whole I guess how we are formed, it's a little hard for us to get services.
While Project Uplift aims to work with legislators to close the gap between the school to prison pipeline, the realities on the ground are far more challenging than one could imagine, notably lack of funding and direct action.
Realistically speaking, we know the fact of our community. We know where we come from. We know, we know kind of the pyramids that's been installed here for a long time, and the paradigms that that people have living in such a community. We are probably the poorest community, if not in the country. We are less resourced than anybody else, and so when these programs come here, they expect us to perform miracles overnight. And so if we are not able to meet those same milestones as a program in upstate New York or another county where as the people within that tax bracket are more affluent, more, better resourced, more educated, then we are deemed as underperformers.
And when they face budget cuts, their programs fall apart and student participants fall through the cracks and often end up in the system.
Just recently around here, we had I think about 100, youth were arrested, over an alleged drug bust. And so what that does is that it brings us, it kind of validates what we're here to do, but then the question becomes, here you are, have these operations to kind of make sure you take them off the streets. What programs do you have, or what contribution have you actually made to keeping them out of those jails, to keep them off the streets and in schools? So a lot of these programs are very important and serves as part of the vital pillars of the community.
It's not only in New York, in many other states, there is no financial incentive for counties to invest in alternatives like prevention, such as peer mediation, guidance counseling, and mentoring in order to reduce conflicts that lead to police intervention.
We're here at the Forest Community Housing Center in the Bronx, which is possibly one of the poorest neighborhoods of not only in New York State, but in all of America. And this is the community center for the youth. It's probably one of the only places here in the neighborhood where the youth can come, they can hang out, maybe play some basketball. And what's significant is if you're on this side of the fence of this community center in these projects, then you're pretty much safe from stop and frisk, search and seizure on the part of the police. However, if you go on the other side of the fence, then you're pretty much on your own, no matter how old you are, 15, 16, 12, it really doesn't matter. Partly because, or mostly because, this is federal property.
New York's new mayor, Bill de Blasio, made a campaign promise of better juvenile justice policies. Policies that keep students in the classroom rather than in a cell or on the streets. All my guests agreed that by increasing the funding for education and by job training programs, New York City could improve its crime statistics and possibly lower future rates of poverty. At the end of the day, is it really that difficult to invest in education?
So I know it's a lot. It's a lot. Um, let me come back on camera. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of these examples that I could have shown. I chose this one for a reason. I need to take a deep breath. Let's get started. A few facts. So Dr. Singer mentioned that, it's a trap of pleading to these lesser charges because you believe that, you would, hey, I got off on this one and they'll let me go. Judge Shahid, you know this probably better than most people on here, right? They'll let me go.
Yes,
I get to
yes.
go home. It's not a big deal. And and what some of you probably already know this, most people don't know is that they reach your Miranda rights. But the little known secret about Miranda is that the thing with Miranda is that there's a comprehension factor that has to go into Miranda, especially for children, which is a reason that they're not supposed to be talking to them without their parents. And even as an older teen, and in some states, they are allowed if they're a certain age. Here in California, it's under 15. Hold on, I think I lost my co-host. So hold on just a second. Yes, ma'am. Did I lose you? Sorry about that. We lost my co-host. So what I was saying is what I wanted to talk about just really quickly is just the fact that there's a developmental skill that's usually beyond the capacity of young and adolescents. Age and intelligence are the primary predictors of Miranda intelligence. And so a lot of adults don't understand their Miranda rights, right, Judge Shahid?
Oh, yes.
So,
Absolutely, yes.
so I wanted you just to talk before we get into the actual school to prison pipeline. That stuck out to me when I was listening to Dr. Singer was I often hear, so why do they plead if they're not guilty? Why do they plead? Why do people plead so much? And he said it perfectly, right? I get to go home. I don't want to go, right? And then all of a sudden they're stacked up with these And last time when I spoke to you guys when we showed the film about misdemeanors, America's misdemeanor problem, and people were shocked that misdemeanors can get you in this much trouble.
Yes.
It's often playing to what could be a wobbler offense or a misdemeanor, right? And what should be a wobbler all of a sudden turns into not only a misdemeanor, but a felony, or it leads down that path to felony. So can you talk to them about this notion of Miranda comprehension and why it's a problem with our juvenile justice system to have them speaking to juveniles when we know they don't know what they're talking about? Because adults don't know Miranda. Go
Right.
ahead, sir.
Right. Well, one of the best ways to get a comprehensive picture of the impact of Miranda and the advisements and being in police custody is the Central Park Six, because in that movie it talks about a young man that ended up pleading guilty because he wanted to go home. And he'd been incarcerated, he had been interrogated for, I think, 10 or 12 hours. And so, what's generally understood with respect to law enforcement is if you uh, if you keep a person in interrogation long enough, they would plead guilty to anything just to get away from the police officers. So the Central Park Six and what happened to those young black men who were wrongfully prosecuted is a good example of how that works. The reality also with respect to the criminal justice system in America is that roughly 90% of the cases that are in the criminal justice system are resolved by plea agreement. Only a small percentage of the cases go to trial. And with respect to which make which are the majority of cases in the courts, not murders, rapes, drug offenses, but misdemeanors. Most of those are resolved by plea agreement because the courts don't have the time to take all those cases to trial. Plus, most of those cases are represented by public defenders, and their caseload and the logistics of trying to be a defense lawyer doesn't allow them to give adequate attention to all the cases that they have on their caseload.
Perfect. And for those who don't understand Miranda, can you tell them what Miranda actually is? It's all the Law and Order fans.
Right, yeah. Well, it was determined by this case called Miranda v. I can't remember, maybe Arizona, that any person who is subject to their liberties being taken away from, they're to be advised that they have a right to counsel. They have a right, they have the privilege against self-incrimination, which means that anything that they say can and may be used against them in a court of law. And so it's mainly to let them know that they don't have to say anything once they are incarcerated or once they are under arrest.
Yeah. And most often we say, keep your mouth shut.
Yes, yes.
Don't say anything. Like my grandmother said, you don't know nothing, you ain't see nothing, you ain't heard nothing. So don't say nothing. Cállate, por favor. This is what we were told. Cierre la boca. Close your mouth. Let's see. So, okay, on that note, so let's go back to what Dr. Singer was saying, and so the thing that I was finding was, the differences between the states. Now, Sister Marcela, you're back. So let me make sure. I think I gave you back. I think you're back being the host, right?
I'm fine either way. You can.
Okay, good.
It's your preference.
I think you're back. That let's go back to why we have this, right? There's no incentive to invest in the systems. And let's start with this. The most common way a young person enters the juvenile justice system is, and I don't even like that term, there's no justice in the juvenile system, is through an encounter with the police. But why are they entering the system in the first place? So now, let's see, we have Trustee Smith-Foles, Brother Hank, let's come on screen. Brother Terry, let's come on screen. I see Miss Abby. I see Teacher Akbar, Miss Aliyah. These are all educators. Okay, good. So let me say this. I'm going to throw out some statistics and then we're going to have some dialogue. On average, students or children come in contact with the justice system have experienced 4 traumatic life events. And according to a study done just under 5 years ago in 2021, 23% of detained girls and 9% of detained boys meet the diagnostic criteria for PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. The most common causes of childhood trauma include accidents, bullying, cyberbullying, physical abuse, and that trauma, the 4 top causes is physical abuse in the household that's led to anxiety and depression, domestic abuse, substance abuse, domestic violence in the home, a history of childhood trauma in the parent's own life, mental health struggles, the physical violence, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, which is prevalent in about 69%. That's reported. It could be as high as 90% of the girls who are in the system. Neglect, defined as the absence of care and affection. And then there are external factors. And the biggest 4 external factors are poverty, which shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, bullying, natural disasters, and witnessing an accident or domestic abuse, especially domestic abuse was number 1. We often hear witnessing crime, but witnessing domestic abuse was the number 1 factor for PTSD in young children. I found that one interesting because I would have thought it was witnessing crime, which is what we've been told over the years. And then the last 2 psychological causes of trauma in children also should not come as a surprise to us, was parental separation or divorce, and then mental health struggles, but not necessarily the child's. It was the strain on parental relationships or the strain on the relationships of those who are taking care of them. So it was children who grow up with parents or caregivers who struggle with mental health had an effect on the child's mental health, which led to things like depression, anxiety, or substance use disorders that affected the parent's ability to provide the care, stability, and emotional support that the child needs, which all affected how the children outcomes. So I wanted to take it from there, especially with some of the educators before they even get to a Judge Shahid. So educators, talk to me. Yes, sir.
If I may,
Mr. Terry.
yeah.
So before you start, I want you to give us a 30-second background on yourself because, and this is, I mean, I know who you are, but you know, the audience doesn't know who you are, and we want it on the recording too.
Yes, let me make it 10 seconds. I'm just a person basically that I think directly or indirectly encounter all the things that you had just said. My goal in life, and I think my purpose is to help those who cannot help themselves. That's why I got involved with the school district. That's why I got involved with the judicial system. And that's why I got involved with family situations to see if I could help prevent or modify or correct things that have been going on in our society. Because I had help growing up that avoided or led me away from things that you had just mentioned that caused us to go to the system that is not good for us. That's who I am. One thing I didn't hear is abandonment. A lot of our kids feel abandoned because they are emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. They feel that the only hope is within themselves, so the survival kick in. And how they learn how to survive is from the family, which is, if you want to use the term parents, or the people who brought them on in this world. And sometimes that's not a good way to accept how you deal with issues and concerns, because the people who brought them in this world do not know how to deal with such. I call it emotional bankrupt. I call it physical bankrupt and mental bankrupt. And so our kids use what they feel as survival skills and take it to the streets, which they learn other ways other than how to help themselves in the correct way, is how to make it through and navigate through our system. And so when they get to the school, the same adaptation come there also. And it says, how do you go make it today? And this is how you survive. And if you want to survive, you got to hang with the big dogs. If you want to be with the big dogs, this is the sacrifice you have to make. You have to lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, abuse, get abused. And all of them encounters cause this to add up. So when a child get to the educational system, their way is, I got to go back home after my 6 hours where I'm at. And I had to be able to relate to how my mom talked to me, how my father talked to me, how my neighbors talk to me, how my brothers and sisters talk to me, and how they interact with me. So, I mean, use example reading. It's a lot of cases that if you are a student, you're not accepted in a majority of the lifestyle that they live in. And if you go home and want to learn how to read, there's no one there to help you read. Matter of fact, they'd be angry at you if you come to them about anything dealing with reading, because they don't know how, to the point where they could comprehend to get you educated enough to move forward. Crime is a badge of honor to a lot of our kids. Unfortunately, I grew up in the projects in Chicago, and if you didn't commit a crime, then you was not one of the homies. So you have to show their colors, not your colors, because your heart can say one thing, but your action have to say something different in order for you to make it from the first floor to the 15th floor in the projects. It was no such thing as geeks and nerds. Either you was down or you was not down. So to make a long story short, when you close your eyes and look at your history and look at majority of people on this call, you know, I don't know everyone's background, but I know the intelligence that I hear today. A lot of our kids is fortunate and blessed to have that person in their lives to lead them in the right path. But I can say over 90% of our kids don't have this, what we're talking about. And the prison system to them is a happy home. And that's where, how do we change that mindset? Because the reason I said, if you look at the juvenile halls, if you look at the jail system and the prison system, you get more non-abandonment there than you would get in your own home. You are guaranteed 3 meals, but it may not be the meals you want, but you know you can eat. You guarantee medical attention, not the medical attention that you want, but you get it. You are the opportunity of education or trade skills, where at home you don't get that. Your skill set is how to live, and how to live is how to steal. How to steal is how to defend yourself. or be accepted to some form of gangs who say they love you, but yet they want to use you, but you don't understand that because they're giving you the attention that you're not getting when you get home. I wish with all my might that we could save every kid on this earth, and I know that's not possible. But I do know if we take one child at a time, it adds up. But it's up to us adults. And it's not really the school responsibility for behavior. It's more so for education, which have something to do with behavior. But a teacher's not taught how to deal with a lot of behaviors and that we get from home. So they dummy down on what they're supposed to do because they have fear. Fear of the kids' parents, fear of the kids' community and who they associate with. So what they do as limited as they possibly can, as much as they can, because the system don't even help them to help our kids.
So let me ask you.
That's where it goes to.
Right. Let me ask you. So let me pivot on that one because I'm going to bring in Hank Roberts because I know that you're working on this on the national level about how we're going to change that dynamic of teaching administrators and teachers and changing that dynamic in the school systems. Talk to us. First of all, Hank, give us the 30-second spiel about who you are.
Just real quickly, Hank Roberts. I have two parents with a sixth grade education, but a PhD in love. And because of that love, I was able to successfully be the first person in my family history to graduate from college. I grew up in St. Louis, moved 9 times, so I'm very familiar with struggle. But I think having been the founder of Peacemakers, which is a school day social emotional support organization, and we're on campus all day, every day, and also being a part of the NAACP, I think my perspective is really from experience, both growing up and in the schools. So I would begin by looking at what's right behind you, my sister, 1865. 1865, as we all know, was a celebratory day, right? But when you fast forward to 2025, we still have Black kids with worse attendance, high suspensions, and poor academic performance. So why? What? The question is why? And I'm gonna say this because I don't want to take up all the time, but when post-traumatic slave syndrome confronts implicit bias, what are you gonna get? That's what you have in the schools. I'll say that again. Post-traumatic slave syndrome, I'll say even try to sit together with implicit bias. What do you expect the outcome will be? And then so when you dive deeper into what I'm saying is we have to look at the infrastructure within public schools because something is wrong if something has got to be wrong. If 18% of our children, Black children, are enrolled in hear me out, they're enrolled in preschool, but they're suspended. This is sad to say, 48% of the time, something is wrong. And this is modern time statistics. Let's look at who's teaching. In preschools, over 70% of the teachers are white. In public schools, over 78% of the teachers are white. The administrators, 80% of the principals. Your school psychologists, critical people, over 75% of them are white. Let's look at the infrastructure. So if you're talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome and implicit bias being in the same house, just digest on what I just said. That's an issue. That's a major issue with that infrastructure. So how do you get to where we are today? This is so much to unpack, and I'm just going to stop real quickly. how do we get to where we are today? We have to remember, in my opinion, it was never purposely designed for us to be educated from the jump. It was not intentional. Never was intentional. So what you see happening in 2025 shows you that it's still not intentional. And we put all of our emphasis on, well, what happens? Oh, what are we going to do? They're failing. But it starts in preschool. And I can say from personal experience, preschool is the beginning of failure. What are they telling us by third grade? If you can't read, they're projecting how many prisoners they're going to need for prison cells. So there's something serious happening that's not later, but it's how do we stop it from the beginning? And I don't have all the answers, but I'll just stop with what I know is critically clear to me. One of those answers is implicit bias. We have to begin to recognize the impact of implicit bias on white teachers, if they're the majority of the teachers. Whether it's deliberate or not, there's a subconsciousness that these folks are thinking in their minds and reacting according to what they've been trained or taught through media, through childhood, growing up, whatever it is, and it's not positive. Post-traumatic slave syndrome, you touched on that a little bit in your conversation. We're wounded people. So let me just end this by saying with the NAACP and what I'm doing, we're finding that parent engagement is a major piece. So again, I'm gonna stop there because I want other folks to have an opportunity to respond and react. Thank you for that amount of time.
Thank you, because I do want to talk about the parent engagement piece, but before we get to that, I want to talk to Sister Aaliyah, and because you're in the classroom, and then I want to talk to Trustee Smith-Folds, who's on. As you can see, I'm working my way up to the decision makers. I want to talk to Sister Aaliyah, who's in the classroom, and then Board Trustee Smith-Folds, who's at the policymaking level, before we get to Judge Shahid, who sees them after the policies have failed. Right? So, and Sister Abi, who's also, Miss Abi, who's also in the classroom, I want you to weigh in as well. So, Sister Leah, talk to me. So when you see him in the classroom, and you see him at all levels, right? You see him in the darling angels that we think we send to you. Because we all think we got little darling angels, and how dare you suspend my little angel? And then we have those of us who know good and well who we sent to you. There's a funny video on TikTok where the guy is the phone keeps ringing. The wife says they're having a conversation and the phone keeps ringing, and she said, "Why are you not answering the phone?" And he said, "Oh, he's just Junior's teacher. She keeps calling. She's calling like every 15 minutes." And she said, "Why are you not answering?" He said, she wants the same thing every time she calls." And she said, "Well, what does she want?" She's saying Junior not listening in the class. And she said, "Oh, well, what did you tell her?" Said, "I tell her he don't listen at home either. I don't call her every time he don't listen." So he just hung up. So he knows his son's a problem. And so at least he recognized it. But most of the parents are totally shocked when they send the little, what's the little doll, Sister Amatullah? The little redhead doll that had the movie. Chucky. Now you know you'll send little Chucky to school, terrorizing everybody. And then when you get that call talking about little Chucky swinging from the light post, throwing pencils at the teacher, you're like, "Huh? What? I'm my little angel." Now you know good and well that your little baby is not running around with a halo on.
The funniest thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, is when I was in the classroom, it seemed like it's an average of 4 kids in every classroom I was in that disrupt the whole class. And I used to call the parents from the classroom. "I have little Chucky, come here. Call your mom. And then I have to get in a debate with mom over her child, saying her child would never do this. And then you have to have a parent teacher child conference. And it gets in a circle of, well, it's your job. And then another thing, when you try to remove the 4 kids so you can teach the other kids, you have no place to send them. And you can't send them to the office send them back to you. They have a special classroom where they send the kids, would make it worse because you got one guy or one young lady there to try to keep them tame for at least the next 2 hours. It's pretty rough on the teacher. And back in the day, they used to whoop your butt, so that's not on the table anymore. But right now, it is. I don't think any of us really have an answer, because the answer is, I don't know if it's tangible, because to get to the kids, you got to go through the parents, and to go through the parents, they know what the policy procedure is. They know what you can and cannot do, and that's why they don't answer the phone, or when they answer the phone, they get defensive, because it seems like what you're saying about their child is you really saying it's about them, and they take it personal. But I'm anxious to find out. The brother who just spoke before I did, we know what the problems are, but what's the solution?
Yeah. So hold on just a second. Hold that thought, Mr. Terry. Let me see. Sister Akbar, what you got for me? Because I know you're in Oakland, so I know you got some. I'm gonna take some notes. I'm gonna write a story about what you're gonna tell us.
I don't know about all that. Well, I'm a school psychologist in Oakland Unified School District. I've been there for many, many years. And what Mr. Hank Roberts said, starting the racism that starts from the very beginning has been subliminally, injected in many of our children, especially if you're poor and you're uneducated, and some of these, and the parents are uneducated, and they have that stigma about the kid. So, and the fact that the kids is not getting support at home. I mean, when I assess children, it's not the school that should be educating the kids. It should be the parents. If the more educated the parents are, more advanced the child will be. And if the parent is not educated and doesn't understand the system, is intimidated by the system, the school system takes advantage of it to some degree. That they will, identify them, put them where they're supposed to be. They'll give them their rights and everything, but underlying it all, if they feel that the parent is not on top of it, they do. I hate to say, at times they do take advantage of it. And when I say take advantage of it, they may give them, certain goals to meet and all this type of things. But unless the parent is behind the schools, the system, say, hey, did my child reach their goal? If they didn't reach the goal, why didn't they reach the goal? Unless that type of conversation is happening, the child does not really even benefit from, as we say, special education. They just keep on pushing them, and the kids get further and further behind. And by the time, like, I'm in high school, so by the time they get in high school, the kid understands exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they can do, and a lot of them give up, or they just don't try to do something higher because they understand their resources are limited. So it really does come down to the parent, to the resources available to the parent, and letting them know what their rights are and what they need, the support they should have. If the child has an IEP, what they should be doing and promoting for their child so they can get their needs met. But if they don't, then unfortunately they get caught up in the system, and the system keeps on pushing them ahead, and they get nothing. And you get kids who cannot read, they cannot write when they get out of high school, and they have a high school diploma, but it doesn't really mean anything. I hate to say it. And so unfortunately, that's but as I said, if it's the opposite, if the parents have resources and support them all through their education, because these Caucasian kids are no smarter than our kids. They just have the resources. That's what it comes down to. And if they're not getting it, then unfortunately, you know, that's how it is. And it goes from Hispanics too. And they have another setback because they have a language issue. They don't understand English, so they can't, you know, unless they, you know, they have an uncle or somebody who gives them a trade or something that can help them. They are kind of in a dilemma too. So that's all I have to say about that. Now, how we're going to how we're going to change that? I don't know. I guess it comes down to love from preschool all the way through. We have to really start caring and start supporting these kids, not, you know, all through their schooling, and not wait until, you know, well, until it's too late.
So thank you, because I think that having the psychologist view of that is really, really important. And before we get to solution, I want to hear on the policy making side. So, Sister Jamila, we often have these conversations about, you know, we can legislate, and we can legislate, you know, people's feelings or how they're going to, you know, what they think about black children or brown children or children living in poverty or how you feel about black and brown children education, because we know that the system is not set up for that, right? However, we can build into the system ways to ensure that teachers are not, and I know people use the term implicit bias. I think it's just bias. I think it's explicit because they know what they're doing, right? They know exactly what they're doing. They know the system. Implicit or what's the other term where you don't know that you're doing it? What's that term? Where you don't know you're being, what is it?
Unconscious.
Yeah, that's the term. Where you don't know you're being biased. I think it's a misnomer. You know you're being biased. You know good and well what you're doing. Yeah, then we're giving them too much credit. You know you're being biased. You know good and well you're treating this one different than you're treating the other one, right? So talk to us about what you've seen as an educator in the classroom. You know, give us your 30-second spiel. I know you know how to do this already. About who is Jamila Smith Bowles. But then, you know, you spent your time in the classroom and now you spent your time in the policymaking sphere. And then what you see from that level. And then we're gonna get into, I wanted to you and Judge Shahid on a different level. I have a couple of questions for you.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jamila Smith Foles. I'm a West Contra Costa Unified School District School Board trustee. I'm a teacher and I'm a parent of 3 daughters, ages 20, 16, and 12. I've been teaching for 20 plus years now, and I've been on the school board since 2020. I think one of the things that we have to realize is that we are trying to take our kids to safe places that have unsafe people in them. I mean, that's the reality. When you have unsafe teachers and unsafe administrators and unsafe whatever in charge of your child for 6 hours a day for 180 days a year for 13 years, and you expect them to come out unharmed, that's ludicrous. Your child is going to come out harmed. They're going to come out harmed. They're going to come out harmed because the policies that are in place are not protective policy for Black children. They are protective policies for others, but there are no protective policies for Black children. So if you want to dismantle a system, then you start with creating policies that are protective, outing policies that are not, looking at those policies and their impact and their effect on the children that have to live under said policies. So, for example, if you have a policy in schools about tardiness, but you don't have a system to where parents can get their children to school on time, then you are creating that policy has barriers that are intentionally there to harm the most marginalized or the ones who do not fit the system where it was created for. Right. So when you had neighborhood schools that were built, they were built because white women stayed at home and could walk their children to school. They had ways that they could drive their children to school. They didn't have to rely on public transportation. They didn't have to rely on going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. Their brother or sister walks a younger one to school, which makes them late for school. So there are barriers that are just built into the system. The system is a barrier itself. So how do you dismantle that system is one policy at a time. So it's looking at the impact of the policy, the reason why the policy exists, and how that policy then creates barriers for the students that they don't want to educate the most, which are Black students. It's always been Black students. So when you look at Brown versus the Board of Education, and we talk about this all the time, it integrated our students, but not our teachers, not our administrators, not the staff, not the culture, not the climate, and not the intentionality to make sure that Black kids are educated. So you're trying to fight an anti-Black system, and you have to do that with policy, breaking down the whiteness of it all. And the reason why the whiteness exists is to keep white up and everyone else down. Honorable Sudduth, I don't know if that was the question you asked me, but that's the answer.
Okay, so no, it is. So let's stay with that for a second. And so for both you and Josh Shahid, so let's stay with that for a second. So yesterday we were disclosure. So Trustee Smith Folds and I were together. We were talking governance yesterday. So let's stay with that for a second. And we were talking about impact versus effect, right? And so when we talk about impacted persons and individuals, and we talk about the effect of policies, right? We talk about the impact of something and the effect of something. And so let's talk about that. Let's stay on there for a second with everyone. The school to prison pipeline. So today students experience certain things. Those of you who know me know that I don't use certain words. I think words have a lot of power and influence, and because words have meaning, and just the way we talk to our children, the way we address our children, the way we say things to them, it can trigger certain emotion, psychological effect. My grandmother used to say, we have children, we don't have kids. Goats have kids. So we start there. So whenever I hear someone call a child a kid, I say to them, we have children, or I rephrase it, right? I'm trying not to reprimand someone, but I say it, these are not kids, they're children, or they're students if we're talking about someone in class. So I think we start there. The expectation of a child, and in some schools, and especially like in Chicago areas where I first used to see it in Chicago and St. Louis. And Brother Hank, you know this too, especially in downtown St. Louis. And I grew up in the suburbs, not in downtown. And I found it quite interesting when we used to encounter people who grew up in the downtown areas of St. Louis, and the schools happened to have more Black students, and they would address them as young kings and young queens. Because I grew up in the suburbs, it was more white. We called it Wonder Bread, because you could smell the Wonder Bread factory on the freeway as you head from downtown to the suburbs. And when you call someone, my mother said, you give your children names with a meaning and purpose to live up to. You don't just give them any name, you don't make them up. And so as a Muslim, you understand that, right? The we grew up as really staunch Southern Baptists. And so it's the same thing. So saying words like putting children in when Dr. In the video, if you listened to Dr. Singer and Mr. Achiabam and Mr. Mual, I always mispronounce his name, Mual Ik.
Mualam Ak.
Mualam Ak. It was AK, right? Not IK. Mualam Ak.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Mualam Ak. They all said the same thing. When you walk through the school, it was a prison-like environment. I can't speak for everybody. I know I'm past my club days. But I remember going to the club. And if they had armed guards and they were checking your purse, Jamila, I'm looking at you because I don't know. I think we talked about this. And they had the metal detector at the door and they were physically wanting to search you. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I'm gone. Something is going to jump off in this club that I don't want to be here. Imagine doing this. Got surveillance cameras, police dogs, armed guards, police on campus, metal detectors, strip searches, and just a physically uninvited building because there's bars on the doors, bars on the windows, small windows, and the campus surrounded by bars. How inviting is that?
Well, I mean, if you walk through a day of a high school, sometimes the best thing to do is to start at the end of the story. So if we're in the educational line, let's start at the end of the story, and that's your high school students. If you walk in the day of a high school student, they get dropped off, or they walk, or they ride with a friend, or they drive. They come to school, they park, they walk through a gate. When they walk through a gate, and I'm talking about West Contra Costa now specifically, they walk through a gate, they see a campus security officer because that's the person standing at the gate. They have to wear a badge because you have to have your tag on, right? So they wear a badge and the badge has to be around their neck. They walk through, they may get breakfast, but the breakfast is filled with preservatives. And if they do have it, it's something that they have to eat very, very quickly. They hear a bell. The bell indicates that they have to go to their first class. They go to the first class. They're not greeted by a teacher. They just walk into the door because teachers are asked to stand at the door, but it's not required in their contract. Remember, we can only ask them to do what's in that four corners. So they then go in and they sit, and it's still a sit and get model. So when it's a sit and get model, you have one authority figure standing over you. You are sitting and you are trying to retrieve the information. If you bring out any type of cellular device or something to distract you, then you are not given a warning. You're given you're not getting given a warning if you're an African American student. Then you are now put out of the class. You are not put out of the class and told just to go to the principal's office. You're escorted to the principal's office. So now that same person who you saw at the gate now takes you in a little cart or holds your arm and escorts you down to the principal's office, which you don't see the principal unless you did something wrong. So it's the principal or the vice principal or the dean or someone who doesn't know your name. And if they do know your name, is not for a good reason. And then they come and they sit there and they lecture you, not asking you why you got put out or you took your cell phone, or not asking what the teacher did and all of that. Then you're just given a punishment. And with that punishment, you are to take it. And if you don't take it and you do something else, then you have an additional charge. It's just like a trumped up charge of saying resisting. Well, I'm not resisting. My body's tensing up because you're trying to put it in an awkward position to where you're then trying to handcuff me and my body's going to tense, but my body tension is you're saying resistance. So your principal asking you, well, how do you feel about this? I don't like that, teacher. Well, now you have another charge because now you're being disrespectful. And then that leads on to then your parents getting called, because we can't suspend you, because if we suspend you, then our numbers for disproportionality goes up. So when our numbers for disproportionality with Black children goes up, then we get red flagged and we get dinged as a district. So what they do is they call your mom and tell her just to come pick you up without paperwork. So they come and pick you up, and when they come and pick you up, you lose your educational rights to the minutes, because if you get suspended, they still have to educate you. They still have to give you your educational minutes. You still have to get some kind of like the access to your test and access to your homework or whatever. But if your mama come pick you up, you lose those rights to those minutes, and then you go home and you get yelled at or fussed at because mom had to come from work or whatever to take you back home, where you sit in the state of mental punishment and physical isolation. And that's the day of a high school student. Most of our high school students, especially our Black males. And then you can take that model, and it's the same in middle school, and it's the same in elementary school, and it's the same in preschool. When in preschool, they just kick you out. Billy hit somebody, so he's out. Jamal hit somebody because he's out. Now, he don't tell you that that little boy pinched him 4 or 5 times and you didn't see it. So his reaction was defense. You're hurting me, so I'm going to defend myself. None of that gets talked about, investigated, or understood. It's just the aging up that we do with Black children and the punishing up that we do with Black children at a constant level. That's the anti-Blackness that's within the systems. I'm complete.
So leave it right there. Stay right there. Judge Shahid, now I want you to tell us, how does that differ from juvenile hall?
Well, it's not very it may be different by name, but it's the same system, which basically is programming our children for incarceration. If I could just very briefly mention two things, what we're really seeing is a continuation of what happened after 1865. And that is when you look at the movie The 13th, it's Ava DuVernay. She did that. It was on Netflix originally, but I checked today and you can see 13th on YouTube, the whole version. And it shows that there has always been a two justice system in America, one system for white people and one system for everybody else. And so the reality is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said many, many years ago, if they won't treat you right, why would they teach you right? And so there's no incentive in America back in 1865 or even today to properly educate African American children. And so I think it's incumbent upon African Americans who are in the leadership category, and I think all of us are, is to try and remedy what we see in place, because what was there in 1865 is still there today. One of the things that's happening is they're shifting money away from public schools to charter and private schools because it's part of the same uh, system of not feeling obligated to educate African American youth. But one of the things that we can do and encourage our neighbors and those who are in our community to do is to reach back to the public schools in particular and assist with reading. One of the things that happened with COVID is remote learning. And so you don't have to go onto the school grounds anymore to be able to assist a child with reading. And in many cases, that person that's helping with reading becomes the most healthy person in that young person's life. So the constant involvement with reading can also serve as mentorship in other capacities. So I just wanted to throw that in before the program was over.
I appreciate that. We actually today, just so you guys know, we this because we show documentary. When we show the documentary, we actually go over time. We don't stop at 12. We stop a little later.
Okay.
So just so you know.
Honorable Sudduth.
Yeah, I'm gonna show while you're talking, I'm gonna pull up a graphic just so because I want to talk through this graphic. So go ahead.
One of the things that at the policy making at the policymaking area that I sit in, one of the things that we have to do is we have to look at our relationships, for example, with labor. So what used to be in the union contract with teachers is that there used to be a little addendum that said, we need to hire and maintain teachers that look like the students that they are teaching. Because all the statistics and all the studies have said representation matters, that makes a difference, right? So that got taken out. When you take out something that had a benefit for Black children, it is an intentional takeaway, right? So then we have to be able to sit as a district body, a governing body, and say, wait a minute, that's important. Let's put that back in. And then we have to go to our HR and say, listen, this is important. How are we reaching out to make sure that we have Black and brown teachers, and I'm specifically talking about Black teachers in the classroom, not everywhere on campus, not just everywhere on campus, but specifically in the classroom. Because and then when you get Black teachers in the classroom, how do you retain them? Because being the only Black teacher on campus, that will run you out faster than anything else because you are the only one. You can never shut your door. I used to be the only Black teacher on many campuses. You can never shut your door because Black children need you. So you never get your break that's due that you're supposed to have legally. You never have a duty-free lunch because somebody's always in there, usually Black children. And if you're a female, Black girls, if you're a male, Black males, in there talking to you because they need, again, this supposed safe place needs to have people with safety, needs to have safe people in it. And you become that only one. So it's not just hiring Black teachers, it's not just retaining Black teachers, but it's doing it on a level to where you are not the only. You are not the only one there, but that's looking at, again, policy. Let's look at our union contracts before we sign TA, tentative agreements, and let's look at that contract language and make sure that it's a part of it. Let's make sure that we have in that contract professional standards that are attached to racialized harm. If a teacher is doing racialized harm to a child and we don't have a mechanism of firing them because it's not saying that they went outside their contract, then that's us not doing our protective due diligence as policymakers. So these are the kind of things that if we want to change systems, I think we have to understand that to change it, we have to dismantle it and rebuild it to where it's supposed to work for those who it's supposed to work for. Because right now the system is working exactly the way it was supposed to. It's serving those who it's supposed to serve. I am complete. Thank you for that moment.
Absolutely. And I wanted to show you just a few things to underscore what you're talking about, right? When you talked about there's zero tolerance policies, they will transfer you to alternative schools, which we know the likelihood of completing is very low. Brother Hank and Brother Alonzo talked about, these in school and out of school suspensions. We talked about, Brother Hank talked about the counselors and Sister Leah talked about, the lack of adequate mental health resources and social workers. Well, they're underfunding and under-resourcing certain schools of purpose. The statistics are alarming. The over 70% of the students who are involved in school-related arrests are Black and brown. And the other part of that is overwhelmingly from impoverished areas. There is another slide that I wanted to show you let's see. It's just the pipeline itself, because this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about more. Because this is really where the rubber meets the road to me. Let me see. Hide this so it's not really in your way. All right. Can you see it good? Or do you need it bigger?
It's viewable on my screen. I don't know how others.
Can everyone see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is the so-called preschool. We always hear school to prison, but it really starts in preschool. And I think Abby said that as a preschool teacher, early education teacher, she was talking about this. And the statistics are alarming. There was one that I read that's I wanted to talk about this part, and then I want to talk about juvenile offenders, Judge Shahid, about some of the offenses that we can look at, the most common offenses. But I want to talk about this part. And Sister Jamila, Trustee Jamila Smith-Foles, there was a statistic that said when children are expelled and when children are held back in school, Brother Hank, you may know this as well, that there is greater than a 60% chance that they will end up in the carceral system. So this third link where it says the child is expelled, even soft expulsion, that's link right there. So I'm going to go back. So starting with the early childhood programs, any program that allows for a toddler to be expelled. And they're saying the teacher who holds implicit bias. So the training of the teacher, we can talk solutions in a moment, but it's that third portion with a child being expelled and or a child being held back a grade. Now, I'm not a proponent of pushing children forward who are not ready to move forward, but there's something about holding them back a grade. And I wanted to talk about that factor. And then if you move forward 3 steps to the child feels a lack of engagement with school and are more likely to drop out. And that occurs after the zero tolerance policies that lead to discipline for minor offenses. I equate that to the misdemeanor problem we talked about a few weeks ago. And all of that leads to a higher risk for incarceration as an adult.
I think whether you hold them back or
Let's
you
talk.
socially promote them, whether you hold them back or you socially promote them, the neglect is the key. The neglect that Black children, I'm speaking specifically of Black children, feel in this system. When you don't hold a standard because you don't see them as capable, human, whatever, the same thing that happens in America on the macro happens in education on the micro. When they walk in and a teacher doesn't correct the behavior or she overcorrects the behavior, anyway, there's that feeling of you are treating me different and here's the why. So, because when teachers don't see Black children or Black students and scholars as students and scholars, they see them as problems, then that's what the reaction is going to be. And that's what the child then absorbs as this is who I am in this system. I am a problem. I am someone not to be cared for, not to be tended to, not to be thought of as what you think of as the other kids in this room, right? So it's one of those things that it's the no matter what's done, because who is doing it and why they are doing it, speaking of the authority figure, who the authority figure is doing it and why they are doing it, it's that has the effect of children, not but Black children, believing that they are incapable or incapable of succeeding. Listen, if any of you had a Black teacher, you know that Black teacher held you to a higher standard. And it was like, I'm telling you not to, I don't care about Billy. I'm telling you not to do it because I know what you have to face and I know what's coming for you around the corner. Those of us who had parents of a certain age, it was like you got to be bigger, badder, stronger, smarter, faster all the time. You can't take a breath because the system is constantly holding you down and you got to be able to stand up with a whole foot on your neck. You got to be able to stand up and you got to be able to stand up and stay up with all the stuff that come. And one of the things that my father hated more than anything or disliked more than anything is when we came with an excuse of it's not fair. He said it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be fair. This is the system. You're in a white system that's not meant to be fair because they don't value you as human. And that's the same thing that happens in our schools. I am complete.
Absolutely. And as somebody who went to an HBCU, I'm sitting over here applauding. I'm applauding. And I see Brother Hank and Sister Manira. Let me throw these figures out at you before you speak. 2010, more than 3 million students were suspended from school. Double the level of suspensions in the 1970s when I was coming up in school. More than 250,000, I mean, I was in the elementary school, but I was still coming up to school. More than 250,000 were referred to police officers for misdemeanor tickets. Black students are suspended and expelled at a rate 3 times greater than white students. Black and Latino students account for 70% of police referrals. And that's from the NEA Today, the National Education Association, and the U.S. Department of Justice. Those are not like trivial figures that somebody just grabbed off of Google. It's the U.S. Department of Justice. So Brother Hank and Sister Manira, and then I want to talk to Judge Shahid about what we can do to disrupt this this cradle. And, I'm gonna go back to the cradle. I didn't even get to preschool. This cradle to prison pipeline. Go ahead, Brother Hank.
Well, if we keep reflecting back on what's been said in the conversation, and we start talking about 18% of our preschoolers are enrolled in 48% are suspended. What makes you think that when they get to the first grade, things are going to change? What makes you think that when they get to the second grade, things are going to change, especially if we know that over 78% of the teachers are white and those teachers are dealing with implicit bias. So it's a perpetual cycle that they're continuing to go through that ultimately leads them to a point where now you're in the 10th grade reading on the second grade level. Unless somehow, somewhere in that process, some teacher saw a need for change, which is very unlikely. So the setup is already there. And so if you really summarize, in my opinion, what we're talking about is systemic institutional racism that's embedded deeply in all systems, and especially in the educational system, which is that system that has an impact on all the other systems that we have to live in, health, housing, and so on. So this is the one system that we must change it, because this system affects your life. And so I do have some insights on solutions, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, and I think that yeah, before we get there, Sister Manira.
Assalamu alaikum.
I'm
Really enjoying the program, and I can see why our children develop anger issues early, dealing with this frustration that they can't put a voice to, and an anger issue toward parents who continue, toward us as parents who continue to send them into this situation that we know is not working. So my question is, when we have a house that's no longer functioning and not serving our best interests, we build a new house. So why can't we develop a preschool to HBCU pipeline? As Judge Shahid said, dealing with remote education and everything, we took advantage of that in COVID and develop a educational system independent of public schools where we have our own teachers and we can employ our own teachers and use all of our resources, our churches, our community centers, to house educational centers with a universal curriculum, teaching our children from preschool to HBCU. We have enough it seems like we have enough to do that. And instead of trying to legislate and fight for these small token changes, when we know it's designed to remain the same, why can't we put our energy towards something we can control and fix all of our problems in one swoop, and even put into place where parents who have not had the proper education, when your child starts preschool, the year before, you have to go through that preschool curriculum and pass it. And then when they go to first grade, you got to go through that first grade curriculum and pass it. Now the whole family is being educated. We can solve our problems, but we're spending so much energy trying to fight for crumbs, and they're just going to change the rules and change the game after they give us a nibble. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. I totally agree with you, and I think it's a great idea. I also know that this is the reason our HBCUs are struggling, because we're not using it. We're not sending our children to them. We're not sending our children to Claremont schools. We're not sending our children to Black preschools. We're not sending our children to Black elementary schools. We have some great schools that are thriving in Chicago and Atlanta, and they're sending, they've had some great stories of sending 100% of their graduating classes to college and universities. But we're not supporting our HBCUs now. I went to Spelman. Both of my sons went to Morehouse. I got $259,000 worth of loans that I'm paying back right now, $259,184.69. I know, because I just paid the bill. So, all of us are not walking that talk. We say it, but we're not doing it. So it sounds good. And I see Judge Shahid, I'm going to let you join in on this. It sounds good, but we're not doing it. Because the truth of the matter is, we put a basketball in our children's hand before they can walk and read. We put a bat. I mean, my son was a what do you call this? He was scouted in high school for baseball.
Yeah,
and I said, all of that's great, but the baseball player. You are a student athlete who plays baseball. So he was a Willie Mays scholar, not a baseball player who went to college. And that was very important for us. So he chose Morehouse over all of these other big schools because he knew he had to have that piece of paper. And he chose it. I didn't choose it for him. I was very glad. And in the back of my head, I was like this. My husband wanted him to go to a big university, D1, so he can watch him on baseball. And it took him a while. I'm letting you some family business, but I mean, we was scrapping over this one because he wanted him on D1. And this is how this plays out all over the country, right? Is that we choose sports, we choose all of these other stuff. Oh, my child is going to this one academic school, because even my daughter didn't want to go. She chose because she's a scientist and researcher. So she wanted to go to a certain research school. So we do this. We do this. This has nothing to do with, oh, the white man is doing this. No, we do this. We do this. We do this. So, it does sound good, and it would be great if we all got on the same agenda, but we're not. The fact of the matter is we're not. And sometimes we put the arrow in the bow ourselves and let go. Domestic violence, I remember it before domestic violence. I love what you just said about teaching the parents, but sometimes, parents are so caught up in just trying to live that it's hard. At Claire Mohammed School in Oakland, I remember we went to Saturday school to learn the same Arabic lessons and how to teach our children how to read. Sister Cora, oh my God, be pleased with her. We went, and the same lessons we as parents had training before our children had the lesson, so we could assist them at home. But I'm going to tell you, that's a privilege to be able to do that. That is not something all parents can do. And my husband wasn't there. I was there because he was at work. And I worked Monday to Friday. Saturday, because my son was very small, I was able to do it. Not everybody can do that. And we have to recognize that that's a privilege. Judge Shahid.
Yes, I just want to first, before I leave, commend the co-host of MAP5 for this program. It's been very, very informative. It's my only disappointment is I don't have a way to get the word out so that everybody could see this program, because it was really excellent, and everybody who participated are really first class, and the documentary that you show was beautiful too. Let me just say this before I leave. I think one of the things that we have to recognize is the power that we have as people of faith. This is a Muslim-oriented program, and there's not a situation that we experience that Allah is not present. And so we see the problem, but one of the things that we have to move beyond is talking about the problem and doing something about the problem. There is a passage in the Torah, but it's also in the Quran. If you save a life, it is as though you saved a community. If you take a life, it's as though you've killed a community. So there are big picture issues, but if we could just, each one of us, convince one of our friends, our family members, our colleagues in faith, interfaith, or whatever, to reach into the school system close to them and just touch the life of one child by helping them learn to read. And in that process, they may become affiliated and associated with the parents of that child, because the parents will say, this is the person that cares about my child. And many of the parents of these children that are struggling, they were struggling in school themselves. And so they can't advocate for their child because they need somebody to help them. And so we may not be able to change the entire inequities with the criminal justice system in America, but if we can just focus on each one of us trying to make a difference in the life of those who we can come in contact with, it, and then trust Allah that He will bring about the outcome that we want and hope for. Because if you save or help one child learn to read, and so they can be productive in this world that's moving toward AI and robotics, and we help that child be a functioning member of this new world to come, we have no idea what impact that one child will have on the rest of the world. So again, thank you for allowing me to participate in this program. And I pray Allah that we will trust Allah and just try to reach out and help at least one young person be successful. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you, Judge Shahid.
Appreciate Yes, we really appreciate you joining us today. And stay tuned. We have another one of these coming up in July, and we're going to be discussing one of my favorite topics, and it's the adultification of young Black children.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Sister, I'm sorry, I'm on two different systems. Two hands, right?
You have
Who
Brother
was
Alonzo
first?
and you have Brother Hank. Hank was first.
Okay. Go ahead, Brother Hank.
Hello. Listen, I mean, it's a lot to unpack and say what has to happen and what needs to happen and expect a microwave outcome. I mean, we've been in this predicament, as I stated earlier, for well over 160 years, and so obviously it's just not gonna be quick for change, but it is gonna take faith, prayer, and belief and action. And so I would start by saying that if we reflect back when we were teaching our own children, before we moved into this Brown versus Board, which was a good thing, we had a different set of issues when we taught our own. That's self-evident. It really is, without going into details. Because you could call the mama, daddy, or whatever, the teacher, go to your house. So we had to bring back the old days. The other options, I think, in the meantime, is if we're going to deal with this system, we need to know how to make this system work for us. We need to know what is what is a school site council meeting? What is that all about? What is LCAP? We need to be educated on how money is spent for services that should be specifically helping us. But if we don't know out of ignorance, then we don't know what and where to go and what to say and what to fight for. So there's a whole education that has to take place that we need to be equipped to understand, and that's going to take time. But we can't continue to function in generational ignorance and say that's how we are. Because you said it best, my sister, when you talked about the excitement and the inspiration that parents get when they want that boy to be an NBA player. They go all out. They go to all these games, and most kids like myself, when you see your parents at the game, you play better. So why can't we take this whole mindset and say, when I see my parents at school, I'm gonna do better? The process is there, but we have to implement that into a setting called education. And again, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but we have to start now in the process. And I think the other last key in here is we have to fight for equity. I mean, I gave a real good profile of the percentages of school psychologists, the percentages of teachers and administrators, and to some extent, are the right people providing services that's best equipped for cultural competency. Teach our kids and advocate for our kids, provide support for our kids. There are organizations that provide behavioral therapy, but they're not equipped. So I want our parents to be educated to go to these meetings and say, yeah, I like the fact that we have school psychologists, but I think I want one that looks like my kid. And if you don't know you have a right to fight for that, then you don't fight. So I'm saying, in summary, there has to be a full revolution of us getting engaged and taking responsibility, even if it's just going to a school and volunteering and checking it out and seeing what kids you can help or support, or going to organizations that do the work and get behind them. That could be a starting point. And I honestly believe if we move forward on these issues, we can create change. I'll stop there.
I agree with you. And Brother Alonzo, just one moment. Give me just one point of privilege real quick. Brother Hank, to your point, I want to say this. I recall, listen, I play sports, so I have nothing against sports. I play sports, my children play sports, my husband was an athlete. We come from a long line of athletics, and I mean, my husband, his dad, they all play minor league baseball. So I love sports, and I think that sports are integral to a child's development. It made me who I am. And I think it's really, really important. But I also started playing piano and violin and flute as a young child. And I have to tell you, my mother didn't miss anything. She didn't miss recitals. She didn't miss a bake sale. I was in Girl Scouts. It was because she had this thing where we were going to try everything. I learned how to draw as a small child. But the one thing they did that I still remember to this day, and I think that this is something that we can start at dates. So any of you can do these at your schools. The same way we cheer at games. They did this for us at I was chess club, I was debate club. They did it at our chess club and debate club. They had, and you probably know these, Brother Hank, because they're famous in Missouri. They cheer for everything. Maybe because we were in Missouri. I don't know. Missouri and Illinois. You know, this is what we do in the Midwest. We cheer for everything. Everything is competition. But they would do that thing like you know how the military has the you go underneath.
Mm-hmm. The
All
arch.
the parents, what do you call it?
Arch.
The arch. So the parents line up first day of school. And it was the dads who started it. And they would like cheer, and the moms would be on one side, and then we would like cheer for the students as they come in. And it was a big deal. And they come through school, and the dads would give them high fives, and the moms would be cheering. And we had a snack table, and everybody made homemade goods. And it was like first day of school, and then we do it on Fridays, and then we'd stay after, and it would be the first PTA meeting would be that first day of school, and it would be coffee with coffee or tea, whatever you want, with the principal, and so you wouldn't like leave, drop them off, and just keep driving. Right. And I brought that to Albany schools when my children went to school there. But we kept doing that. And then if they had, whether they were in debate club, whether they were in the acting club, thespians, it didn't matter. You didn't have to just do a sport. Whatever your child is interested in, we made it a big deal. And, I think that if we get back to that, you don't have to have a ball. You don't have to, be in sports, but make school exciting for them. Um, my son he was younger than most of the students in his class. And when they found out he was turning 10, I was shocked. All of them, his friends were standing there at drop off because it was like the horseshoe. And they had balloons and they were like, I'm here. And they were like shouting and screaming and they and he was just so happy because there was something about turning 10 with little boys. I think it's just the double digits, right? That even the teacher was out there and he was just like, I'm here. And he was so happy. And he looked forward to going to school. And I think that that's what we have to get back to. Look forward to going to school. Brother Alonzo.
A couple of things. Since 1962, that's the year I was born, and 1964, when I started learning about the Black community, which I grew up in. And the same thing I was hearing in 1964, I'm hearing in 2025. What we should do, what we could do, what we may do, what we might do. And it's kind of sad that we still saying the same thing. Maybe different people, but we're still singing the same song. We as a people only could do for ourselves. I think that's what Elijah Muhammad was speaking way back then. How to eat to live. Message to the Black man, and make things for ourselves, build things for ourselves. But the problem I see, in our society, is that when you look at the applications of people applying, you're like, where are the Black people? How come they're not applying? Why out of 20 people, maybe only 2 people apply for this position? I'm talking about in the educational system. Why is it that we don't have volunteers come in to help our kids to be right and do right and learn how to read and write? We all at the age, because I think we operate out of fear and we operate out of history, because we always have to go back 100 years, 200 years, why we came here, how we came here, and what we're going through. We know this already. The thing is, you got so many intelligent Black people, even on this phone, that we know what we need to do. The question is, why don't we do it? And I think because the people of my age, somehow we have a fear of kids of age of teenagers. We don't want to be bothered with them. We don't have the patience to teach them. I refereed for 22 years, I think, going on now, from youth sports all the way to college and some semi-pro. And sports is a safe place for a lot of our kids. They feel like they belong to something that's positive and give them some type of award for what they do or what they can't do. The same thing, I just judged a science fair early this year. And I'm going to say 100 children was involved, students. I think 70 of them was of Indian descent. 20 of them was of Asian descent. And I think we had, and then this was at Los Padamos College, I think we had maybe 3 Black people in that science fair, which we are in Pittsburgh. And I stood up here and I asked the president, where is the people of color? Where's the Black kids? How come not one? And he said to me, they cannot get no teacher, science teacher to volunteer to help our kids to get into these type of science fair. And the reason why I say it's sad is because most people on this phone, we of age. And I'm going to say, I think the youngest one I may think is 30. If anybody is younger than 30, I apologize. But as a ex-school board trustee, we deal with policy, but we only have one employee, which is the superintendent. And everything based on test scores, the state exams. And normally our teachers teach to the test. Somehow, some way, we still come up short. Do any of us have an answer? I don't think so completely, but I know we could strive that way. But I think, in my mind, if we look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what do we have to bring to the table? And I think somebody mentioned, talk to somebody else. I try to get it's 189 referees we have in our association. I made sure we had up to date, we have 90 Blacks to deal with our kids because we referee in Richmond, Oakland, San Francisco, Sacramento, San Jose, East County, West County. And I had signed a contract with Snoop Dogg because there's certain referees that could deal with our athletes to understand what we're going through. And we keep saying the system. And I'm going to say this till I change colors. Everything starts at home. And I mean, when I say at home, I'm talking about not just a house, but a home. And that means your neighbors, your community. And that includes the school, the business and stuff that give us the ability to say we believe in ourselves, we could do for ourselves, and we are somebody. I think that they said that a while back. And right now, we have to turn the page and say, okay, what's the next stage that we need to go through? Because a lot of us went through hardship. We went through a time where life was more than difficult than it is today for our kids. But our kids is doing worse than what we did. And what's the answer to that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And I think if we work together as a team and have more action than just words, because this time next year, we should be able to check off a box and say, this is what we done to make a better place for our children to move forward. And I appreciate everybody on this phone call, and I'm glad I did come on the call. And I think our future could be bright if we, as a people, eliminate the fear of our kids, of our children. And I think that's a point that I hear from people my age. I don't want to deal with them. They hard-headed. They don't want to listen. They want to hurt than help. If our mindset is set that way, how do you think our children feel? Because they hear us, whether you think they hear us or not, they listening. They always ear hustling, and what we say matters a lot to them. And so on that note, I appreciate it. Let's love each other, but let's share the love. Let's pass it down.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so let me get to Hank, but I really want to get Sister Amatullah. She hasn't said anything this morning, so I want to get her take on this before I get Trustee Smith-Folds' last words. So, Brother Hank, what you got to say? And I want to get to Sister Amatullah.
Let me just say this real quickly, because I think that being realistic, children are a product of children's behavior is a product of those who are responsible for them. So I'm not blaming anybody. I'm saying that overall, I believe we dropped the ball. And some of that was because of the drug infiltration, the destruction of our village, where we had accountability. And of course, trying to figure out who you are in a society that every day is constantly trying to confuse you is difficult. We have no place to go to have a meeting. We can't go to Africa because we don't have that. I mean, you can, but it's not the same as being from Africa and getting on a plane and going somewhere in less than 10 minutes. Mexicans can go to Mexico and recruit. and rebuild. And where do we go? It's difficult. It's difficult to find yourself in this society because of, again, the constant bombardment of confusion. The other last thing I would just say is that we just have to come together and recognize, those of us who know the truth, who understand, we have to come together and then move the village into the school, because there's ways you can serve the school through volunteering, but you got to know that there's a how to that. And I want to make sure that that's available to anyone who's interested, because I have the beginnings of the how. I'll stop there.
Wonderful. We want to start this coalition of teaching people to read. I like that. I do a lot with reading and science, but I love that call to action from Judge Shahid. Abby, I'm loving your comments in the chat. I know you're in the classroom, but I like this. Sister Amatullah, talk to us. I know you over there taking notes. I can see you.
I have about 15 points, but I'm not going to go through all. The first one I will say is domestic violence is a crime, and it can potentially be the most shattering experience for a child, up there with sexual abuse, that I think have long-standing consequences on the psyche of the individual. And I think we have to be mindful of that. I'll start off with the last part I wrote down, thinking about what Judge Shahid reminded us of, was the prophetic saying of knowledge is the lost possession of the believer, which I think is a good motivation for us. When I lived in East Oakland especially, it's nothing to see a Hispanic grandmother with a stroller and a school age child, maybe first or second grade, walking those children to school. If you look in the Asian communities, you see the grandmother who looks like she's 90 years old, and she may even have a child strapped on her back, and she's accompanying them to school. And why do I bring that up? Because early on in the program, we just talked about it. And Brother Alonso mentioned that abandonment was not mentioned as far as one of the factors affecting children. And there are different kinds of abandonment. You know, there's the emotional, there's the physical abandonment, there's so many kinds of the mental abandonment, there's so many kinds that have consequences, I think, on our children. And also, Brother Alonso mentioned that he felt he had been a victim of all of those statistics that you had ticked off, Sister Cheryl. I want to, and I want to kick myself because I had thought about George this weekend, but I didn't contact him, and I should have contacted him to be on the program. We had Brother George Caldoon, who worked with the brother with founding the Harlem Children Zone, that system of education. And what made me think of it was when Sister Jamila was talking about policies. And the thing that they used in creating their structure was they didn't create policies. They went to the neighborhoods, they had community meetings, they hounded parents to come to those community meetings. They found out what is it that you want for your child in this educational system. And based on the interests of the parents and the community members, they structured, they developed a strategy on how they would move forward in structuring what they wanted for the Harlem Children's School Zone. So I think that's a good model to start to look at and see what good points from that model can be taken, especially policy. I, having been a member of the Nation of Islam, and I really bought into the Nation of Islam because I did not see any other organization in our community at the time really delivering on what they were saying. People might be talking black, 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 black in the daytime, and then we would even say it, and they'd be sleeping white at night, or just have the mindset underneath that black talk that was essentially plantation mindset. And I did for me. I saw the nation as an organization that was trying to build something that was independent and was for self. And I think that whatever solutions we look at, we have to make sure that our mindset is not one that is still rooted in that kind of plantation thinking for us to really truly become independent people. Um, Environment, Cheryl mentioned environment, and I think that is very important as far as the environment that is in the home and in the neighborhood too. You can't expect children not to be angry and aggressive if they wake up and go to sleep to either boyfriend or daddy beating up mama, or mama maybe beating up the daddy. I don't know. Or they wake up to gunshots, or they go to sleep to gunshots, or they hear firecrackers and they have to listen to make sure was that firecrackers or was that a gunshot, or they hear the helicopter over and say, oh, they after Popo is after somebody. So the environments that we have in our community plays a very important part of what affects the child. In the documentary, the young man, five Muallim X's son, he mentioned that the students they have to get to the high school early in the morning. They're groggy, they're tired, and you don't know what they had to deal with just to get there. To then now come to this prison-like environment is even more of a challenge. So our home and our community environments, our religious environments also. If we have religious communities, we have to make sure, I believe, that those environments are pro education, pro support of education, and pro encouragement of our youth. I think that is in motivation. I think that is one thing that sports, particularly, and then even the creative arts does. It's they're motivating and encouraging to people to really to stretch themselves. So those are just kind of the things, and I agree with Brother Alonzo. We got to stop talking so much and actually do it, however that is. And if you have the ability to help in the area of education, we should do it. You don't have to rely on the state. I mean, I worked at Muhammad University of Islam in New York, and we had the boys come in the morning, the girls come in the afternoon. I think that's how it worked. Yeah. And we had 3 or 4 little raggedy buses that went around and picked up the kids. Um, and, it was funded by poor people, um, chipping in the money that they could. The tuition was low. And one other thing is that if people don't value education, they don't care about putting resources to education. They don't care about financially supporting education. I want to remind the members of our association that Brother Adam Bayard started 100 at 50. So every month there's a different Clara Muhammad school that is identified. And those who are part of this group, they write their donation for $50. If you don't have $50, I can remember when we had a middle and high school project here in the Bay Area. I went to the P.O. box and we had a fundraiser, and a person sent $5 check. You would have thought that was $5 million because I knew that that was someone that saw the value in education. And they were apologetic. They said, this is all I have to give now. But if I get more, I'll give you more. And so we have to be people who value education. And we just aren't that right now. We got to be honest with ourselves. We value the Gucci and the this and the that and the you mentioned it and going in the club and looking like $1 million and everybody trying to chase you for all the money that you borrow. So we have to value education that will help us to grow. And I have a different take on the charter school situation, but for communities that can't afford, they don't have the financial resources, charter school might be the answer. That's not my preference, but it might be the answer. I just think that every community has to look and see what's available and what will work for us, for our interests, to help our children. And stop holding up these rappers and these athletes and these movie artists as their role model. Let them think about their grandpa and their grandma that suffered and those who struggled so that they would be able to go to school as people that they can learn from. And so I don't want to say anymore. I could go on. Those are my brief comments. Thank you for the documentary. It's really, really good one.
Thank you. I think this is good. Trustee Smith Bowles, I want you to give us some final words. And I want to say, yeah, we do these to bring awareness, but also to brainstorm on some ways that we can tap into solutions. It's not going to come under overnight, as Brother Hank said, but we can make a dent in it. So, Trustee Smith Bowles, before I close us out of here, talk to us, give us some words.
I think one of the things that we need to know as a people is we vote with our feet and we lead with our feet, right? We are doers. So one of the things that I think that we can do is look at your local education agencies, look at your school boards, look at your superintendent, look at those people who are in positions of power, because all expulsions come to the school board for approval. And if you have a board of 5, that means 3 or more have to say yes to that child being expelled. So are we having people in positions that ask the questions in closed sessions when that expulsion comes to the school board? I'm specifically talking about WCC USD, right? So when you're at WCC USD and an expulsion comes to you, are you asking those critical questions? Okay, what interventions were done before? What did how has this impacted this student? How will it impact this student? Or do you have people who just get in there and say yes to the expulsion and never ask the question, right? How many times, what led up to the expulsion? Are you asking those questions? What was a fight? What was it, mutual combat? Or did the kid start it? How many times did we expel people for this same type of infraction? Why are we expelling this Black child for it? All of these things? Again, it's looking at your policymakers and your decision makers and ensuring that they have the best interests of specifically Black children in mind. I think that there's a understanding that you need to understand compliance and culture, right? I don't think that we are going to be able to love people into loving us. If that was going to happen, it would have happened 400 years ago. But I think we can put people in positions that are protective positions, meaning that if I'm sitting on the school board and I'm able to hire a superintendent because that's my only employee, then I'm going to make darn sure that it's one that has the best interests of Black children in mind. And then I'm going to interrogate that person and then hold that person accountable for not only the compliance, but help to shift the culture of a school system. So when we vote, we need to vote with the understanding of the accountability of what we're doing when we put people in positions of policy making, positions of power, and positions of privilege, because it is a privilege to sit on the school board. It's a privilege to be a trustee, because to Honorable Sudduth, what she said in the very beginning when she was speaking to me about being a trustee, the root word is trust. So how do you have it, own it, maintain it, create it, and replicate it? So that's my goal every day when I wake up as a trustee on the school board. And I ask all of you to look at those people that your vote puts in those positions, because it matters. It matters from the very top to the very bottom. We always say the fish rots from the head down. If it's not done at the top, it will not be done at the very bottom in the classroom with these teachers. If the people on the board don't care about your child, the teachers in the classroom don't care about your child. I am complete.
And I do have one more question for you right before we leave, but Sister Abby, I see you came on camera. You want to say anything? There you go.
Okay. Yeah, this has been a very informative, well, I guess re-informative presentation or program that you did. I'm so happy that you did it. You know, you can, when you work in the school system, you kind of get caught up in the culture of it, and you sometimes forget the things that we are talking about. You just keep on going on with your day, and this, if anything, has really sparked in my mind things that I need to do and change my attitude. And I think also we all need to, those who are practicing their faith, just need to work on our own souls to make sure that we don't become hardened or uncaring. You have to really work on ourselves, not become that way, because this world can make you that way. And, or, you know, you just go through the, you know, you go through the motions of what you need to do, and you forget what's most important. And I thank you for Sister Amatullah and you, Cheryl, for doing this. It brought back to me what's most important. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Leah. And Sister Miss Scarborough, what you got for us?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Miss Sudduth, for inviting me. I love panels and being informative about well, just children. My name is Abi Kalia Scarborough, and I am a preschool teacher here in Oakland Unified School District at Bella Vista. And I'm new to the site. It's an actual child development center. I am the only Black teacher here. Um, um, I have experienced our children being different. I have 16 students. The beginning of the school year, I had half African American, and that African American were like Middle Eastern first generation born in America, two students of that. Um, and then I have Vietnamese, Chinese, and Latino, but the majority is African American. And the dynamics of the classroom changed as they kept on adding more of the African American students. I'm finding that our parents need a lot of guidance. Just, the basics of, bringing your child to school and making sure just the simple things of, being clean and, having the different items that they need, simple things, water bottle, blanket. We give all everything else. Um, and I would tell you that we have 4 classes, and my class is the wildest. Or put it as they have the most character. I call them stars. People say, oh, he's a bad boy or he's a bad girl. I said, no, they're not bad. They're just being curious, and and I'm here to guide and direct them. I I do think we need to have a better system. And I did make a comment earlier on the chat that when becoming teachers, you have to be committed before coming into the classroom that you want to be a teacher. And being a teacher is a mother or a sister, an auntie. If you're, a male, I tell all the males that come and sub, I love that you're present here because our kids need to see more male role models in early childhood. What else do I would like to say? And I'm here. I'm here to advise. I'm finding that most of our parents have the most difficulty just living life on its own, you know, trying to catch the bus to school or try to get to school, or most of them don't have employment, you know, at my site. And I go the extra mile, but that's just me. And I think all teachers need to be able to go the extra mile. What can you do more than just teach? What can you do more than just teach? You know, and I support my community. I try to bring resources in here. We have a navigator in the CDC, you know, that's supposed to help the parents navigate with paperwork or anything that they need. A lot of our parents don't even want to say, I need. And so I offer, hey, do you guys need a bus pass? I can go ahead and put in for a bus pass. Do you guys need extra food? I can find the different places where you can pick up food, and um trying to influence our scholars the best way possible. I just came here. This is my last thing saying this. I took our children to the Oakland Museum, 3 classes out of 4 this past week, and they hadn't had a field trip in 7 years. And so I'm like, we have to get our kids out there. Some of our kids never been on a bus before. I had a parent say, I wanted to always take my daughter on the bus, but I just never did. That was the field trip that was more, you know, interesting than actually the museum, but actually showing them the city that they live in and how we can get around. It was so exciting. And I love that. I didn't think I wanted to be a teacher, but now knowing what our children and our families go through, I want to do whatever it is that it takes to become the teacher for my students. And that means we have to wiggle and do different things in order to make sure our students thrive. Thank you so much. And I hope to be invited to other forums like this because it's I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one. You know, we're not the only ones. And then we must do something about this. We must. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. I appreciate you so much
So can
joining
I
us.
interject one other thing? With her point of, you know, being more of a teacher, I meant to make note of this. I remember about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a news segment about a principal, I want to say in San Jose, it was somewhere in the South Bay, that she recognized that a large population of her students came from families that were homeless, well, unhoused, people will say. They were like living in their cars or if they had campers and whatnot. So what she did, there's this principal, they set up in vacant space with that they had there on the school campus, washers and dryers, so that
I saw.
remember that story, so that
Yeah.
you know the parents could come and do their laundry or whatever, and then when the sister um, when Sister Abikalia mentioned about just coming to school clean and whatnot, that to me that is a teacher, a principal who is really interested in helping her community.
Yeah, I love that story because it's above and beyond.
Yeah.
And then they did it where you could come early before the other students so no one knew.
Right.
And they kept it really, and then they had a food pantry too, I believe,
Yeah, I
right?
believe so
And they
too.
had like and they had like a school store where if you needed clothes, you could get clean clothes, you can get uniforms and things like that. So yeah, I love that story. We're coming to the end of our time together. So I wanted to just say a few things to wrap us all up. There was a couple of points that were made in the documentary that I wanted to say, that I wanted to reiterate, because often we blame neighborhood gangs on the issue. And there was something that was said in the documentary by Dr. Singer. He said that the gangs become the family for some of the students. And he said that the gangs become the employer of last resort. The gangs help to protect the children from the other gangs. So what ends up happening is the gangs are not the cause. The gangs are symptoms of societal decay. And so And when I heard him say that, I was thinking, the gangs, they see them as the solution. So we have to counter that by strengthening other programs. We need to create programs of social empowerment and civic responsibility for our students ourselves. And so when we're investing in education, we have to invest in the schools. And I know that schools are trying to do so much, but schools can only address so much. Schools can't address all the problems of society. They really are just reinforcing what society is doing and trying to prepare students to enter society. But if society has no jobs, which is what's happening now, right? And you have these young people coming into the inner city communities, and they're going to schools, as they mentioned in the documentary, and they're getting bored. And when you have these zero tolerance policies, they're getting suspended for having a very human reaction. Many adults get bored. We get bored at work. We get mad and bored at work, right? And so they're getting suspended or they're getting disciplined for a very human reaction to boredom. So they're getting talked down to, they're getting treated badly. They have security guards who are reacting badly. It's the same as, so what's happening in the schools is also what's happening in the streets. And we have officers who are beating down people in the streets. Now they're beating them down in the classroom. So what ends up happening is they're getting suspended. And the same decay that's happening in societies. So how do we do that? So we invest in better juvenile justice policies that keep the students in the classroom rather than in a cell or the streets. And we have to agree that we're going to increase the funding for education and job training programs, because the proof is that that does improve not only crime statistics, but it does lower the future rates of poverty when we invest in education. I sit on the Racial Justice Oversight Body here in Contra Costa County. I also participate in Alameda County here in Northern California. And we've been looking at ways, and I sit on the diversion subcommittee for that body. And these, our statistics committee as well. And I sit on the juvenile justice committee with our district attorney. And I will just say that the one thing that each of you can do, that we do have control over, is district attorneys are elected. All of them are elected. Sheriffs are elected. School board members are elected. So we do have power. We're not powerless. And as Justice Smith-Bowles said earlier, the trustees of your school board elect your superintendent, or they hire your superintendent. So if we're electing the school board and they are hiring the superintendent, we have a direct line into ensuring we have the policies that are going to meet the needs of our students. We have a direct line into creating the type of programs we need for our students. We just need to exercise that power. So those are some of the solutions that we can put into place to disrupt this cradle to prison pipeline and move from this type of zero tolerance policies to the type of transformative justice that we need for our students that are going to change the odds for all of our children and our youth in our school. But we need that type of community collaboration, because that's going to be the best way to avoid or disrupt that type of school to prison pipeline. But we have to be the ones to initiate it. There's too much money in it otherwise. So the community has to posse up and do the work. And with that, do we know what we're doing next week? I know Brother Fleming is back next week with the show for us.
Okay. I'm not sure what his topic will be. I think it might be a follow-up on culture, but I'm not quite sure.
I'm sure it'll be something great on civic engagement because he's very good at that.
No doubt.
And so we will see you back here next week. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you all. Sister Manira did a great job of putting the link for this show in the chat. If you have a chance, grab it. Otherwise, we will make sure we post it on the website so you can grab a copy of the show, watch it, share it. And we will see you back here, inshallah, next week, next Monday, the 30th.
30th.
Same time. It's the end of June already, sister.
Yeah.
So fast. So fast.
Half a year.
Inshallah. I know it's going fast. Same time, same place. 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. And stay prayerful, stay powerful, stay philanthropic, stay politically engaged. Do something for someone else without the expectation that they will do something in return. Have a wonderful Monday. Have an even more wonderful week. And in the words of mi abuela, change the way you look at things, and the things that you see will surely change. Have a fantastic. And with that,
it's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Thank
I
you.
will see you guys in a few weeks. Oh, one more reminder. We will be talking about the adultification of our young girls and boys next month. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Peace.
Assalamualaikum.